Basically, I'm here to talk tonight about my experiences with Air Canada. Unfortunately, not very good ones. So, some years ago, unfortunately, my grandmother passed away, my dad's mom. So, me and my dad, we flew from Toronto down to Jamaica to attend my grandma's funeral. My dad had booked us two fares with Air Canada. His was a bereavement fare since it was his mother that he was traveling to pay his respects to attend her funeral. And my fare was just a regular fare. But when my dad booked our two tickets with Air Canada, he did tell them about the circumstances, and they assured him that the tickets they issued him were tickets to get on the plane that they stated. Like, these were regular plane tickets that had the date and the time, flight number, all that information, seat number, telling us which plane to get on, what time we're going to be taking it, what time we're going to be landing in Jamaica, and all that, assuring us that we'd be in Jamaica in time for my grandmother's funeral. Well, lo and behold, we get to Toronto Pearson International Airport, and when we get to the Air Canada ticket counter, the agent there tells us that those are standby tickets. And my dad said, no, these are not standby tickets, that when he booked these tickets, he made it very clear to them that he doesn't want standby tickets. He needs tickets that are assigned to a specific flight. And that these tickets are assigned to a specific flight. He has to get on that one particular flight. And back at this time, like when we did book this flight, at this particular time of year, on that particular day anyways, that was the only Air Canada flight that was going from Toronto to Jamaica that day. So if we couldn't get on that flight, we would have to wait till the following day to fly down to Jamaica, which was just not an option for us. Because besides attending the funeral, my dad also had some, participated in the organization of the funeral as well too. So he had additional responsibilities when we got down to Jamaica. So the ticket agent continued to insist that these are standby tickets and that the flight is overbooked by 100 people. Like, how the hell do you overbook a flight by 100 people? I'm sorry, but overbooking flights, overbooking airplanes, overbooking trains, or overbooking buses should be against the law. Or at the very least, if they're going to put people on standby, they should be required by law to state very clearly that these are standby tickets you might not get on the next flight, train, or plane. So, after arguing with Air Canada for a while, they finally did decide to put us on that flight, given the circumstances. Like, I will give it to Air Canada. In all fairness to Air Canada, the one thing they did do to show us how sorry they were was, even though we had economy class tickets going down, they did put us in first class for flying down to Jamaica, which was quite nice. It was unfortunate the circumstances we were going down there for, but at least we had a very nice, comfortable flight with good food, unlimited alcohol, nice, very comfortable seats that reclined 90 degrees. Even the bathrooms in first class are nicer than the bathrooms that you get to use in economy class. So I would suggest, if you're able to ever fly in first class, do it. But my more recent incident with my more recent troubles with Air Canada were when I was flying from London, Ontario to Vancouver. I was flying in economy class. I was flying from London, Ontario to Vancouver. So basically the way Air Canada books that flight, or does that particular flight, is I'd have to take one plane from London, Ontario to Toronto, and then catch a larger plane to take me from Toronto to Vancouver. So anyways, my flight was scheduled to leave at approximately 9:10 a.m. this particular morning. Everyone made it there actually early. It's a matter of fact, this plane was even able to pull away from the building, I think about 2 minutes early. I think it left at 9:08. So the plane backed out from the gate that people use to enter the plane. And then it just kind of sat there, kind of paused after backing out. And it just sat there and sat there and sat there and sat there. Maybe after about, 15 to 20 minutes, the pilot finally came on and said that a trouble code has come up on his dash, indicating, I can't even remember what the trouble code was, but he assured us that it would just be a matter of making a phone call to Air Canada to get that trouble code cleared so that he'd be able to take off again. Well, this was a small plane called a turboprop because it has two propellers on it. It was a plane that seated, I think, either 74 or 78 people. So smaller than a 737. So anyways, where I was sitting, I was able to see up to the front of the plane, see that the pilot, he actually had the door to the cockpit open. I could actually see the pilot was on the phone. He had to be on the phone for, a good 15, 20 minutes or so. And we just sat there wondering what the hell's going on. And then, after sitting out there for the better part of an hour, like I'd say 45 minutes to 1 hour, the plane finally went back to the terminal, and the pilot made an announcement that there's a mechanical issue with the plane, and this may take a while to fix, that we may want to wait inside the terminal to be more comfortable. So we went back inside the terminal around 10 o'clock. After being on that plane since about 9:08 that morning. Sitting in the terminal, maybe about 30 minutes later, they made an announcement that there's a mechanical issue with that plane and that the parts they need to fix that mechanical issue have to come from Toronto. And they cannot come there by airplane. They have to come by ground transportation. So it's approximately a 2-hour drive from London to Toronto, depending on traffic and weather and other factors. Yeah, it's about a 2-hour drive from London's International Airport to Toronto's International Airport, called Pearson International. So we just sat there in the terminal, initially told that our flight was going to leave at 11:30. So close to 11:30, we found out now the flight's not going to leave till about 1:30. As it got closer to 1:30, we found out the flight's not going to leave till 2:30. And there were several things that went through our mind. And all that time sitting there, it's only about a 35 to 40 minute airplane ride from London, Ontario to Toronto. But with it being about a 2-hour drive, why couldn't they have brought in a couple of buses and put us on those buses to take us to Pearson International Airport instead of having us sit there and wait for these parts to arrive from Toronto by ground transportation? Didn't make any sense to me. So anyways, 2:30 rolls around. Of course, the flight doesn't get going until 2:30. Another issue we had as well too, like I mentioned to you, that I was supposed to have a connecting flight leaving from Toronto to take me to Vancouver. Well, my 9:10 a.m. flight was scheduled to get me into Toronto for 9:51 a.m. Once getting to Toronto at 9:51, my flight from Toronto to Vancouver was supposed to leave Toronto at 11 a.m. to get me to Vancouver for about 4 p.m. Toronto time, or about 1 o'clock Vancouver time. So I still continue to sit there waiting. They gave us, as compensation, they gave us some stupid flight vouchers for $10. And these vouchers, they told us we could use these vouchers to either A, buy something in Air Canada's lounge at the airport, or we could use them to purchase something on the plane, such as food or beverage. So finally, at 3:30, the plane's been fixed. We're able to get on the plane at 3:30. While we're getting on the plane, they gave us some additional vouchers that were supposed to give us a discount off of our next Air Canada flights. So I took those vouchers. Our plane left London maybe around 3:40 p.m., 6.5 hours after it was scheduled to leave at 9:10 a.m. We got into Toronto around 4:20 p.m. And then I had to walk to the terminal to get on my flight to go out to Vancouver. Now, once I got to that terminal, at that time of day, flights were leaving from Toronto to Vancouver every 30 minutes. So it would have been too late, obviously, for the 4:30 flight. And it would have been, the way that airlines are set up, it would have been too late to catch the 5 o'clock flight. So the earliest flight I could have caught was 5:30. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention too. They also gave us, anyone who was catching a connecting flight from Toronto and London, they gave us tickets. And I noticed the tickets they gave me, like normal tickets that your assigned seat tickets on Air Canada, they normally had a red border at the top of them. This particular ticket did look different to me. It had a gray border at the top of it. I asked the Air Canada representative that gave me this ticket, is this a regular ticket that will get me a guaranteed seat on that plane? She said, oh yes, it is. I asked her, is this a standby ticket? And she said, no, it's not a standby ticket. Are you sure about that? Oh yeah, it's not a standby ticket. We'll definitely get you on this plane. Now this ticket was scheduled for the plane leaving Toronto at 7 p.m., arriving in Vancouver at around 9 p.m. Vancouver time, which would have been midnight Toronto time. So anyways, I go and try to get on the 5:30 plane using that ticket. And what does the Air Canada representative there tell me? She tells me that that ticket is a standby ticket. So I told her what I was told by the representative in London, that I was assured I would get on the plane no later than 7 o'clock, but to try to see if I could get on an earlier plane at say 5:30 or 6 o'clock or 6:30. And she told me, well, there's a standby ticket. This plane is quite full. Why don't you have a seat and we'll see what we can do. So anyways, they loaded up every single person on that plane. It took them a while to load. Like, this plane was filled to the brim. So finally, about 10 minutes after they load that plane up, I go up and I ask the Air Canada rep again, am I getting on this plane? She said, I'm not too sure yet. Literally within about 30 seconds of asking her that, she calls me up and hands me a ticket. And by this time I was so frustrated I took the ticket from her. I didn't give her a hard time. I wasn't rude to her. I'll admit I took the ticket from her without saying thanks for it because I was just frustrated at the way that day had gone. So I took the ticket from her. Now mind you, this is where Air Canada actually did do something decent for me. When I read the ticket, I was looking to see where they put me, see if I was put in another middle seat. It turns out that they put me in business class, even though my ticket was for economy class. So yeah, that was nice of Air Canada to put me up in business class when I paid for an economy class ticket. But then again, they owed that to me as far as I was concerned for all the trouble I went through that day. Like, fortunately for me, this was just a pleasure trip. I was going out to spend some time in BC. BC is my favorite province in Canada, British Columbia. So I was going out there for some rest and relaxation, some fun. Thankfully, I didn't have anything set up for the middle of that day out in Vancouver, because if I did, those plans would have been ruined. So I got on business class, and I enjoyed myself. Unlimited food, unlimited drinks, and again, one of the rare occasions that I've actually tasted good food on an airplane. Flew out to Vancouver, left at 5:30, got to Vancouver around 7:30 Vancouver time. So, I went out to Vancouver and I had a good time. I enjoyed my trip out there. Now, when it came time to come back home, my trip from Vancouver to Toronto, of course, I ended up in economy class because that's what I paid for. Word of advice: if possible, try pre-booking your ticket and picking out doing seat selection, because if you don't do seat selection, then by default you end up in a center seat. So if there's 6 seats across the plane, 3 seats on each side of the aisle, for whatever reason the computer just defaults to put you in the center seat. Now, this was my first time flying by myself and booking air tickets by myself, so I wasn't aware of this fact. So I ended up in the center seat on an uncomfortable flight back from Vancouver to Toronto, but, thankfully it was on time, and more importantly, it arrived safely in Toronto. So I get into Toronto. My flight from Toronto back to London was supposed to leave Toronto around 4:22 p.m. and get me back to London for 5 p.m. I look up at the travel board, or the destination screen, the screen that gives you the information about planes and all that stuff. And it assured me that, flight such and such is going to be departing Toronto at 4:22 p.m., arriving in London at 5 p.m. With a flight number and everything. So I just go and have a seat, playing on my phone, waiting to be called to board the plane. All of a sudden I hear this one lady say, "I'm supposed to be going to London at 4:22, not Sudbury at 6. So lo and behold, I look up at the screen, all of a sudden it's changed to Sudbury at 6 p.m. So I go over to the larger screen that lists all the flights, and I see the 4:22 to London's been cancelled. Here we go again. So I go over and ask an Air Canada representative what's going on. She told me that flight's been cancelled due to bad weather. There's a threat of thunderstorms in the area. Therefore, they had to cancel that flight for safety reasons. So she said, I have one of 2 choices. I could make my own way home, hop on, rent a car, or take a bus, or make my own way home, keep the receipts for for my transportation from Toronto to London, hold on to my flight ticket from Toronto to London as well too, and I'd get refunded for the unused portion of my flight ticket from Toronto to London, and I'd also get compensated for my transportation home that I had to arrange myself. That was my first choice, that I'd be reimbursed for all those things. Or my second choice is they put me up in a hotel at their expense, give me dinner as well too, dinner vouchers, and then they'd fly me out from Toronto to London at 6:45 the next morning. So I said, okay, can I have some time to think about it? She said, sure. Walked away from the counter, and the ticket agent said to me, someone else, another customer said to me, listen, I was overhearing your conversation with Air Canada. I would advise you to take option B, stay in the hotel overnight, and then have them fly you home in the morning. And she went on to explain to me that her cousin took option A, and she rented herself a car and drove home, and she told me that it took forever, that it took her months to get compensated by Air Canada for making her own way home. This is what she had said to me, and that she had to fight with Air Canada for quite a while to get reimbursed. So I just decided to make a call to my employer because I was supposed to be into work the next day, and I asked him, explained the situation to him and said, is that really going to screw you guys up if I don't make it into work tomorrow? He said, no, don't worry about coming into work tomorrow. You can come back to work the next day you're here. Go spend the night in the hotel. So I decided to do that. I took option B, went to the hotel. Air Canada gave me a $20 meal voucher. And I was thinking, okay, great. This will buy me a decent dinner. Well, this particular hotel I was staying at, all I had was a fish and chips, and I think I had a glass of Coca-Cola or some other soft drink, with my dinner. Fish and chips and a soft drink at this particular hotel, which was in the Dixie 401 area of Mississauga. I can't remember the exact name of the hotel. Came up to $22 and change. Like, this hotel, in my opinion, wasn't very fancy. It was an okay hotel. It was comfortable, it was clean and everything, and I had a good night's sleep there, but it was way overpriced. So anyways, I hop on my flight. Next day, I got on my flight without incident back to London. I tried redeeming that one discount voucher to see how much of a discount I would get. Of course, I couldn't sign on to Air Canada's website. I don't know if the problem was with their website or with my internet connection, but I couldn't get on their website. Went to my travel agent. Had my travel agent sign on to the website, and she discovered all I was getting from Air Canada was a 15% discount on my next flight. Well, I called up Air Canada's call center, had to wait several minutes, quite a while, to speak to a call center rep. The call center rep I spoke to was telling me, well, there's nothing she can do about it, and I asked to speak to her supervisor and manager. And she told me she doesn't have a supervisor or manager, which to me sounded like a load of baloney. Like, everyone has a manager or supervisor. She told me she didn't have a manager or supervisor. And she said, well, if I want to complain, I can either email my complaint in or I can write to Air Canada to complain. But that's just the poor customer service I got from Air Canada. I'm sure that many other people have had good experiences with Air Canada, but those were just some examples of service that I had with Air Canada that makes me say that Air Canada sucks. That's just my opinion, by the way. That is not meant to slander or defame Air Canada. That's strictly my opinion.